how do you weigh the two economic platforms that are in this election?
I think both of them are fundamentally irrelevant. It's the same thing I said at the beginning. They're not dealing with the economic problems that we have. The point I wanted to make with the immigration is, the problem with immigration is, how do you integrate the problems solving that we have to do? If you have a low birth rate, if you want to have more of a working population, if the population you have not only has a low birth rate, but the other side of that, a growing section of people too old to work, so that we're going to rely on those who are young who work to produce enough of a surplus to give a decent pension and retirement to the older ones who are becoming relatively more numerous, then immigration is your solution. Which is why, by the way, it's happening in part. It is a solution. Now, if it offends, if it upsets your domestic, your native population, okay, how are you going to deal with that? Well, one of the reasons is a fear of competition for jobs, there's a fear of competition for housing and all the rest of it. Correct, and there should be that fear. We haven't planned for that. We haven't undertaken the housing construction or the job creation, and that's what the government could and should do. The domestic, the native people will love it. We're going to give you a job and a home. And we're also going to give it to the immigrant, but the immigrant's not getting it at your expense. That's half the argument the Republicans make. Building people's anti-immigration by saying they're taking your job, they're taking your home, they're eating your pets. I mean, the imagery is all the same. They are savages. And we're going to protect you, build a wall, protect you from the... It's the mentality. The mentality of building a stockade around the colonial village in the Northeast or wherever it might be. It's that again, playing on that thematic in American culture. So for me, I'm disappointed because nothing creative is offered to this other than building a wall. That's not a creative solution. That's a defensive solution that doesn't question the premises. And it's the same thing everywhere else. Taking away taxes from tips, if I understand correctly, that was proposed first by Trump and then agreed to, picked up also by Harris. So they both are going to remove. This is saying to a poor beggar on the street, oh, you have no money? Here, I'm giving you 3 nickels. Okay, he'll take them. 3 nickels, 15 cents. Maybe he can get something for 50. But it's not going to change. That beggar is going to be there tomorrow because 15 cents is not relevant to the scope of the problem that he faces. The problems we face as a nation are not handled by giving first-time homeowners $25,000. It's not, doesn't do it. You've got to face, not a word said, that we've had 3 or 4 decades now of redistributing wealth and income upward. The solution to that is to reverse it and move the redistribution the other way. Here's the irony. In the decades before the collapse of the 1930s, we had the same redistribution. It blew up, and then in the 1930s, there was the reverse, the redistribution down. So what happened in the 1930s? Just remember our history. You taxed corporations and the rich in a way you hadn't before. And what did you do with the money? You created the Social Security system, which gives to everybody who reaches age 65 a pension. At a time of the Depression when the government had no money, it did, of course. It taxed corporations and the rich. We passed the first minimum wage in the United States in the 1930s. We passed unemployment compensation for the first time in American history in the 1930s. We never had a Social Security system before until the 1930s. And the big one, I haven't even mentioned, we hired, the federal government hired 15 million people who were unemployed and now had a job and could make their mortgage. Okay, that was a radical redistribution of wealth and income down. to offset the explosion when it went too far up. You know where we are now? Too far up. You know what comes next? ... All of that is magically not a concern. They don't say a word about it. There's not a word in it. Kamala Harris, who's the Democrat, way you would expect it, doesn't talk about redistribution of wealth. She's afraid. Her advisors tell her, as they have told every other Democratic candidate, don't you dare say that. That's like touching a third rail, you know. You'll be politically dead if you do that. Can't say that. You know, you get that advice over and over again, you end up sounding like nothing. Her strategy seems to be to advocate very little so she can't be shot at for that. Now, might that hide a commitment to do something really dramatic? Maybe. I don't think so. It's not in her history. Didn't do that anywhere else. Didn't do that in California, you know, so.